so you're aware, I will, anytime that I have a lecture or am giving a demonstration in class, I'm going to record it, and that will be posted on Google Classroom. I do that because we're in the midst of a pandemic, and someone who's absent could or might not be in quarantine. I have no way of knowing until I get an email that says for sure. And I would hate for anyone who wasn't here because they were in quarantine to miss out on what was done in the class. Now, I'm not discriminating. The stuff will be on Google Classroom. So if you're absent for another reason, it's still there for you. So if you want to go to it, that's perfectly okay by me. So I'm recording this now is the reason I wanted to make that announcement. So today, we have a little more to do than just the syllabus read through. Because this is our only time we're meeting all week, since it's just a once-a-week class, we will go through the syllabus. I'm going to try to do so as quickly as possible. And then you should also have this other packet here of sketchbook expectations. We'll talk about that as well. But we'll also spend a little time talking about materials. I'll get to that here more in depth in a moment. But I learned very quickly, I learned after a few semesters here that when it comes to the materials, students don't always know what they're looking for. And whatever store you may decide to go to, they don't always know what you're looking for. And I've had situations where students came in and they had the wrong materials. Now, that'll dive into much more in depth when we get there. First off, we'll just go through the syllabus. Like I said, I'm not going to read everything here, but we'll hit on the key points. First off, this is Art 111, Intro to Drawing. We'll meet every Monday right here at 6:30 p.m. Below that, well, first off, hi, I'm Jason Cole. If you do not know me, this is the first time meeting me, I have no problem with you just referring to me as Jason. I'm not trying to be that cool, awesome professor that's like, call me by my first name. I'm not that guy. It's just that I worked for a long time with kids at Memphis Boys Town who were like 7 to 11 years old, who referred to me as Mr. Cole. And when I first started teaching in college, and it was somebody who could literally look at me eye to eye calling me Mr. Cole, that felt weird. Over the years, I've gotten over that. Still, if you get an email from me, it'll be signed Jason. If you call me Jason, I'm not going to be offended. But if you absolutely can't bring yourself to refer to a professor by their first name, Mr. Cole or Professor Cole isn't going to bother me. But I don't take issue with just being called Jason. Below that are my office hours. There's a footnote there that when you go down to the bottom, it explains that I will hold my office hours in person this semester. I had them only virtually last semester. But if you're there, mask needs to be worn by both you and me. If you enter without a mask, you'll be asked to leave and return with one. Also, I'm going to have my office door cracked open. I won't have it shut all the way, but it also won't be open all the way. So that if you go to my office, which, by the way, is in this building, DFAB 113, the other side of this building, if you head down that hallway, after you pass the bathrooms on your right, my office is that first door there. And the way that my office door operates, the way that it swings, if you're just coming down that way and you stop before you actually get in front of my office, it could look like the door is shut. All right, so before you decide, oh, well, the door is shut, I'm just going to leave, go ahead and take a quick look and just see if I might have it cracked open. I keep it that way so that I can have my mask off while I'm in there. But if you come by during office hours and need to speak, for your protection, I will put my mask on. All right. There's this notification that you're seeing on all of your syllabi right now. I won't dive into it at this moment. You're going to get enough of this over the course of the week. Just know this outlines the fact that there are safety protocols in place and that students should be prepared for things to change. Whether that means we end up going to fully online, or if that means we go hybrid, or what, I don't know how I do hybrid with a class that meets once a week, but still, whatever that is, this essentially just says prepare for that. All right, I will kind of dive into the course description. All right, intro to blah, 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 blah. That should say, Introduction to Drawing is an introduction class which will expose the student to a number of traditional skills and ideas that have occupied artists throughout history. The class involves drawing from direct observation. That's our goal in this particular semester, with an emphasis on accuracy of representation, space, volume, linear, and freehand perspective. If you don't know what those are, don't worry, that's what the class is for. And other basic techniques and concepts. This shouldn't say Basic Drawing 1, this should say Introduction to Drawing. There is an emphasis on line as the principal purveyor of form. This class deals with line almost exclusively. Drawing 2 is the semester where we spend a lot more time with what you might consider shading. We'll play around with value a little bit toward the end of the semester, but for the most part, we're going to be looking at ways to just take line on paper and create an illusion that you're not looking at a flat piece of paper with a bunch of lines on it, but you're actually looking at a three-dimensional space that goes deeper within that paper. All right, I'm not going to worry about going through the course goals and objectives right now. We'll kind of break down the units of study. All right, the familiarization with tools and materials we're going to do now. That's what's going to happen today. Then we're going to spend a few weeks dealing with linear perspective. That's we'll get much more in depth into what that is when the time comes. Just know it is a very basic means of getting the look of 3 dimensions on a page. It goes back to the Renaissance in Europe. They're the ones who sort of developed it. And it's a very simplified and very codified way of creating something that looks 3-dimensional on the paper. I like to start there because this is something that even if you've never drawn before, this is a nice place to start because it's very technical and very rules-based. But also, if you're very experienced in drawing, it is something that can be a challenge as well. Then we'll get into a little bit of planar analysis. Don't worry if you don't know what that is. You'll learn. Then we'll sort of work in some freehand techniques. That's what this loose to tight and unfinished to finish is. And then finally at the end, we'll bring in a little bit of value. Value in this case not meaning, what your drawing is worth. Value means the dark and light. Value is what you might refer to as shading. All right? There's no reading for the class. Suggested reading, I've got a book here listed, but as far as the required stuff, it'll just be anything that I either print out or put on Google Classroom, and I'm like, hey, read this. All right? I'll dive into the course requirements here and then ask if you've got any questions about anything before I move on. So things to keep in mind about the course. What you need for this course, first off, is a personal sketchbook or journal. We'll talk about that in depth, very in depth in a moment. It's an important requirement for the course. It's a depository for ideas, visual observation, responses to anything, in class or outside. Include research of artists of special interests, techniques, subjects, methods, media processes, master studies, reproductions, etc. Drill yourself on in-class skills, research artist mentions in class, include thumbnails of intended compositions. Write. Don't do anything in your sketchbook without also writing some notes about what you did. All right. We'll dive into this more in depth here in a moment. The sketchbook makes up of, I think it's a 15% of your grade. We'll see that here in a little bit. But it is something that you are expected to be working on your own time. We won't devote any classroom time to it. I won't give you specific assignments. It's something for you to be personally working on in your own time, outside of the very specific things that I assign in the classroom. It says it'll be reviewed on specific days. I don't know if I'll be able to get to that, but for sure it'll get graded at midterm and finals. Then completion of weekly in-class assignments and a related homework assignment is required for the course. The way the class will normally go, each week there'll be a skill or a set of skills that I'm demonstrating to you, and then you will practice in the classroom. That's what all this setup over here is for. Don't worry, you won't be drawing from that starting off, right? That was at the end of last semester. It just hasn't been cleaned up yet. All right, that by the end of the semester, you'll have a still life like that, but not immediately. Excuse me. So you'll be seated here. You'll practice that skill, and then there'll be a homework assignment that will have you employ that skill at home that will then be due when you come to class the next week. Right? And then a final portfolio of all the work done in the course due at finals. Right? Now, questions about any of that before I move on? Oh, yeah. I'll explain that in a bit as well. But yes, I wouldn't keep your stuff. I mean, I have a lot of, if you go around this room, there are a lot of portfolios left over. It's just because students didn't come back to get them. When the day comes that they're due, I give you a time to drop them off and a time to come back and get them, and there'll be a lot of students who just don't come back. So I have lots of portfolios laying around, but I promise I try to get them back to you. All right, so I don't want to dive into all of the details of the attendance policy. Just know that for this class, because we only meet once a week, 4 absences is the automatic fail cutoff. Right? I know that's tough, but I mean, that's an entire month of class if you miss 4 of them. Right? We only meet once a week. Excused absences, which don't count toward that 4, are for approved scheduled university extracurricular activities, meaning I've gotten an email from your coach or whomever, and I know you're not going to be there, or quarantine absences that I have received official notification. Any other medical absences can be discussed on an individual basis, but it's not guaranteed. Wow, I don't know why my mouse is being weird. Fine, we'll just have some extra. All right. Like, if you have to miss because of a medical reason or other reasons, contact me. I'll listen. I may not agree that it should be excused, but I might. Right? We'll talk about that one-on-one on an individual basis. The rest of that I'll leave for you to read for yourself. Now, it says here students will work for the entire class period. Understand, I know that 2.5 hours is a long time. I give you guys a break. Usually around 8 o'clock we take a break, right? So that you can go get your nicotine your fix, or your sugar fix, or your caffeine fix, whatever it is you need at that moment. And then come back and we'll finish up. This here is just a notification related to COVID as far as absences go, the attendance policy. Mainly just saying if you're going to be quarantined, if you have to quarantine, let me know. I'll get an official notification, but you still need to reach out so that I can either, depending on what we need to do, either make alternative assignments for you or come up with alternative means for you to submit your assignments, things of that nature. It's best that I know and have a conversation with you via email or Zoom, for that matter, so that we can work those things out. But I also wanted to put this in here, which essentially just explains that if you find yourself needing to look after someone who is quarantining, it's not you that's quarantining, but because of your circumstances, you're having to look after someone else. Let me know. I'll work with you on that as well. The wording of this makes it sound like you better let me know, but that's not what I mean how I meant it to be. The point is, if you find yourself having to quarantine and look after someone else and that's causing difficulties with you getting here or with your performance in the class, talk to me before things get bad. All right. Methods of assessment. Like I said, there'll be a homework assignment. If you're not turning that homework in on time, it gets penalized 1 full letter grade. I do letter grades in the class because I've never figured out how to give a drawing or a painting like an 87. So I do letter grades, A, B, C, D, and with pluses and minuses in between to modulate that. Now, Google Classroom, however, only allows you to enter number grades. So with each assignment, you'll see it when it pops up in Google Classroom. There'll be a legend, if you will, that explains what number corresponds to what letter grade. Right? It all works out when it averages your grade at the end, I promise. But that way, there's no arguments about why did I get an 87? Why didn't I get an 88? Right? It's because I have set up numbers to correspond to certain letter grades. A homework assignment, if it's turned in properly, meaning on time, and graded, can be reworked for a better grade. Students often take advantage of this. Now, if you turn it in late, you're just dealing with whatever the grade is minus a letter. But if you turn it in on time and you get the assignment back and you're not happy with the grade, there will be comments written on the back of it as to why you earned that grade. If you feel like you could do better, then rework it, either by reworking on that very drawing itself, if the issues can be solved that way, or by getting yourself a new sheet of paper and drawing it over. Submit it, and I'll grade it again. And I don't guarantee a better grade, but I will never, let's just say for some reason, I don't know, you decided to rework it, but I don't know, your friends decided to drag you out to a party right beforehand, and so you did the whole thing drunk, and it's even worse than the first one you did. I'll never give you a worse grade. I'll just let you keep the grade you had in that particular case. But most of the time, this is a benefit for students because you've had a little bit of time to work on further skills. And so to rework this older assignment is actually kind of going back in time a little bit for you. You've already had a little bit of time to improve. So most students improve their grade by doing that. All right. The drawings you do in class don't get graded anyway. They're just meant to be practice. So they're not anything that can be reworked. Now, I will go over this late assignment policy because that's something I had to start putting in my syllabi because students were taking advantage and just not turning in work until like the last day of class. And that wasn't a problem when I first started working here, but suddenly I'd say in like the last 2 years maybe, suddenly there are I keep getting these students who will just not turn in work. And then just all of a sudden at the end of the semester, they're trying to cram it all at me. And I couldn't really say, no, I'm not going to take that because I had nothing in the syllabus that said you couldn't do that. So now there is something in the syllabus that says this specifically, that a homework is considered late if it's not been submitted by the beginning of class on the scheduled date, because believe it or not, I had students who would try to squirt something out really quickly on a piece of paper when they should have been in class working and then give it to me at the end of class saying, here's my homework. No. If it's not at the beginning of class, it's considered late. If you're not handing it in on time, it'll be penalized 1 full grade, as I mentioned, with an exception that's mentioned above. Late work cannot be resubmitted for the possibility of a better grade. Late homework must be turned in within 2 weeks of the scheduled due date in order to receive a grade. After the 2 weeks, the assignment will not be accepted and the grade of 0 will remain. When I put in the grades, if you have not turned the assignment in on time, I will put a 0 and I'll type in what date that 0 is permanent in Google Classroom. And if you fail to turn in 4 homework assignments, you automatically fail the course. That may seem like a small number, but again, it's about a month's worth of homework. And I got again, I got very tired of students just not turning in work over and over again, so I had to put something in place for that. Because I couldn't submit an automatic fail for somebody who had even missed, like 9 homework assignments because it wasn't in the syllabus. So I was like, all right, let's take care of that. Sketchbooks, again, will be graded at midterm and finals. You're expected to be making extensive use of it throughout the semester on your own time. All right, that was a ton of verbal diarrhea, I know, but do you have questions about any of that? All right, I'll take your silence and lack of eye contact to mean you feel fully informed. All right, so then let's talk about how the grade breaks down. So your homework assignments, that's 60% of the grade. So if you're not turning in homework, that's a very easy way to fail the class. Most people who fail the class, it's because of that, just not turning in homework. If you're turning in homework, rarely is that homework ever going to receive an F. If I see that you're struggling with something, but that you put forth the effort, well, you'll see the definitions for grades in a little bit. That's at least D territory for me. You're putting forth that effort. Even if everything on there is just absolutely wrong, and it happens, and if it happens to you, it's nothing to be ashamed of. But rarely does anybody ever get an F. To get an F, you'd have had to have just, drawn a check mark on the page and threw it on the stack in order to have it turned in on time. So if anybody fails the course, it's usually because they're not turning in homework at all. That is because all you have left then is 40% of the grade. Right? So there's no way to pass if you're not turning in homework. Your sketchbook, I was right, is 15% of the grade. And how you perform in the classroom. And I don't mean, are your drawings all nice and perfect and pristine? I mean, are you participating? Are you putting forth an effort? Are you asking questions when you're confused about things? If I give you a suggestion, are you at least making the effort to give that a try? Or vice versa, are you just sitting there like a lump on a log, pretending to be drawing until I come close to you, and then suddenly you start scribbling really fast until I've walked by, and then you just sit there again? Are you staring at your phone? Are you spending way too much of your time talking to your neighbor? Although with just 4 of you in here, it may not be such a big deal if people have some conversation. But in bigger groups, I kind of have to keep it quiet. That kind of stuff, right? Are you putting forth the effort in the classroom? That is 25% of the grade. All right? Come on down here. So, as I said, I don't do number of grades, I do letters. So, here are my letter grades with definitions out next to them. So anytime you get a drawing back with a grade on it, compare it to the definition here. And if you disagree that your drawing, if you feel like your drawing exceeds the definition, come talk to me. We can discuss that. Again, as I said before, the grade will have some comments along with it. And if you feel like you could do a better job, then rework that drawing. Your final letter grade definitions are down here. Again, I just put the letters with definitions. Look at the letter grade that you would like to earn in this class, and then aim for what that definition says. All right. COVID requirements down here. It's what the school requires at this point. And even if it wasn't what the school was requiring, I would have required it in the classroom. I want you to wear a mouth and nose covering in the classroom each day. Just to be safe. All right. Hopefully this isn't something we have to do for much longer. I hope. God, I hope. But we will do it for now. If you come to class without proper face covering, you're going to be asked to leave the classroom. You can return in a timely manner with a mask. You'll just be counted as tardy. I didn't talk about this, but in the in the attendance policy, 3 times of coming to class late equals 1 absence. If you're not able to come back, then you're counted as absent for the day. What do I want to talk about this here? Keep your work in a portfolio. We'll talk about this more in depth in the materials down here. But craftsmanship counts in this class. And so if you're taking your drawings and like rolling them up and bringing them into class all wadded in a ball and throwing them down there, all that wrinkled mess can ruin what could have been a good drawing. Right? So keep your work in a portfolio so it stays nice and smooth. Put your name and date on anything that you turn in on the back. I have reasons for that I'll get into when we actually start having assignments. Now, you may not know what I'm talking about when I say that all your finished work must be fixed. This stuff right here. Right, this is workable fixative. I have an emergency stash here, but it's also something I'm going to ask for you to have for yourself. This is it's called a spray fixative because spraying this onto the paper fixes your drawing to the paper so that it doesn't smudge. It takes all that charcoal and graphite that is on the paper and sticks it down, seals it to the paper. It's called workable because you can still draw on top of it. It's got the right kind of finish to it to allow you to continue to draw. Now, as it says here in the next line, though, don't spray this fixative in the classroom. Take it outside. Our lungs will appreciate the consideration because, for one, this stuff smells really strong, and I don't want anybody like losing brain cells. And 2, I just explained to you that this will take the graphite and the charcoal and fix it to the paper. Well, as we're drawing, charcoal, graphite, dust flies into the air. We can't help but breathe that stuff in. If we then breathe in some of this, well, that's just fixing that stuff nicely to the inside of your lungs. We don't want to do that either, right? I don't know how much the masks would protect us from that. But so to be on the safe side, every time we fix our drawings, take it outside. Don't worry about this participating in critiques. We're not really going to have time for critiques in this class. Things to not have in the classroom. Cell phone. You can have it in your pocket, but silence it. Don't answer it. If for some reason you think like you may have an emergency call coming in, or if you're an RA, something like that, and you expect your phone will have to ring at some point during class, that's fine. Just let me know ahead of time. Still keep it on vibrate and take it outside if you have to answer it. No texting in the class. Again, if there's an emergency situation, just let me know. Any device with headphones, tobacco of any kind, drugs or alcohol, which seems weird to have to put in there, but it happens. So just don't light up in class and don't come to class lit, and you're going to be okay. Internet, social networking sites, laziness. Don't bring those into the classroom. All right. That was a ton of stuff. Questions about any of it?
So for the things that we would put in the portfolio, is some of that going to include things that we're going to tear out of the sketchbook?
Not out of the sketchbook. You're going to have a larger pad of paper that drawings that are done in class and homework are done on. That's what will go in the portfolio.
Sketchbook is not that.
No, sketchbook is its own separate thing. Okay?
The newsprint paper, the stuff that will be going in the portfolio.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk to you about that all much more in depth in a moment, so I'm not even going to go through this materials list right now. There are some artists that are listed here. If you're just struggling to find artists of your own to look up, go look up some of these folks. All right, so lastly, what we have is the class schedule. And the class schedule is broken down by week. And in our case, just by week, because you're just in class 1 day a week. It tells you what you're going to do that week and what is expected of you as far as homework goes. If something, here, like the sketchbooks, When the sketchbooks are due, that is bolded and underlined and in all caps for that matter. All right. So, for instance, today, which is week 1, August 16th, it says introduction, review of syllabus, which is what we're doing right now. Then we're about to talk about the materials, and we're going to discuss the sketchbook expectations. And then there's an outside assignment that we'll talk about more in depth in a moment. All right? Now, questions about that? Okay.